Before the video starts, go ahead and leave a like, because this anime is truly great, full of unexpected twists, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it a lot. Without further delay, let's get right into the video. In a world where some teenagers develop special powers for a limited period of time, Yu Arasaka uses his ability to temporarily possess other people in order to get ahead at school. But his entire life is turned upside down when now Tomori discovers him and forces him to transfer to a special school that protects young people with these abilities. Together, they face challenges involving dark secrets, dangerous experiments, and emotional sacrifices. Yu is a 15-year-old boy who, aside from being a complete loser, is also rather unpleasant and has a highly questionable personality. He constantly tries to get ahead in everything by cheating. His father simply walked out one day saying he was going to buy cigarettes and never came back. But anyway, not everything in his life is a complete failure. Even though he was abandoned, Yu has above average looks and that sly smile that really catches people's attention. This causes several girls to fall for him. But behind that charming facade, he's just a cocky boy who uses his special power to deceive everyone around him. In this universe, there's a very peculiar phenomenon. When certain children reach adolescence, they awaken supernatural powers. But these abilities are not permanent, they disappear once the person becomes an adult. Since childhood, Yu has always thought of himself as superior, constantly placing himself above others as if he were someone truly special. When he finally reaches his teenage years, his power awakens. He can control other people's bodies for a short time, but there's a very important limitation: he can only do this for 5 seconds. And during that brief window, his own body collapses to the ground as if unconscious. After that short time ends, his consciousness is pulled back into his own body. As time passes, Yu becomes more skilled at using his power, and he starts pushing the limits of what he can do with it, testing it in dangerous and questionable situations, like satisfying his curiosity about what it's like to be inside the body of a well-endowed woman. He also takes revenge on people he dislikes, using his ability to drag them into fights or humiliating scenarios. But the way he uses this power most often is in school. He cheats on exams, deceives teachers, and always ensures he gets the highest grades. This is how he manages to get accepted into a prestigious private school meant for gifted students. He even does well on the entrance exam, but entirely through cheating. On the day of the welcoming ceremony, he is selected as the freshman representative and steps up to the stage to give a speech. The girls are fascinated by him. They think he's handsome, smart, and extremely well-mannered. As a result, Yu constantly receives invitations to hang out, but he turns them all down just to boost his ego. It might seem like he doesn't care, but in reality, he does have feelings. And it's exactly for the most beautiful girl in the school, Ayumi. One day, he decides to follow Ayumi and her best friend Miss Hima. While they're walking home from school, the two stop at a crosswalk and begin chatting, and that's when Yu decides to act. He takes control of Miss Hima's body and runs as far as possible within those 5 seconds. Immediately after that, Yu possesses the body of a truck driver who's approaching the street. His plan is to run Ayumi over, but right before she's sent into the afterlife, he returns to his own body and throws himself at her, saving her life like a true hero. Moments later, Miss Hima regains control of his body and asks if everyone is okay. Worried, Ayumi approaches the driver to check if no one was injured. She then thanks the supposed savior for his actions and reveals that she and Miss Hima were on their way to a cafe known for its incredible pancakes. She invites Yu to come along with them, and seizing the opportunity, Yu acts shy and kind to manipulate the situation. It works perfectly, and Miss Hima decides to leave them alone and goes home, believing that her friend deserves to have a nice moment with Yu. Later, the two go to the cafe and enjoy their time there, sharing pancakes and having a long conversation. In the middle of it, Ayumi asks if he'd like to go out with her again after school, and with that charming and confident look in his eyes, Yu agrees. The next day, he gets a message from Ayumi saying she'll be waiting for him outside the school. But just before he can leave, he's summoned to an emergency meeting in the student council office. When he arrives, he's greeted by Yashuki, the council president. Yashuki explains that, under the orders of the higher-ups, Yu must retake the entrance exam, as he is under investigation for possible cheating. If he refuses or scores less than a 9 on the test, he'll be expelled from the school. Yu becomes outraged, saying the whole thing is absurd, but realizes he has no other choice. He decides to try stealing all the answers to the test using his power, and during the exam, he possesses Yashuki to grab the answer sheet. But to his surprise, Yashuki isn't holding the test answers, he's holding an indecent magazine instead. Annoyed, Yu ends up tearing the entire magazine apart while still inside his body. When he returns to his own body, Yashuki is completely confused, thinking he might might have destroyed something important. Pretending to be innocent, Yu says it looked like he had lost control and ripped up the answer sheet. But just then, a blonde girl suddenly appears behind you, holding a camera and recording everything. She introduces herself as Tamori, the student council president from another school, called Star Ocean Academy, and with a smug little smirk of victory on her face. She says she finally caught him red-handed, lying. She shows him a video in which he appears asleep and tells him that not long ago, he claimed he saw Yashuki ripping the answer sheet, but in reality, he had his head down on the desk. In addition, she shows even more old recordings where he pulled the same stunt during previous exams. Yu tries to justify himself by saying he has a medical condition that makes him black out suddenly and that he can't control it. But she presents the report from his entrance exam, proving that there's no mention of any such illness. Yu panics and runs away, passing by a boy with glasses who seems to be his partner. He continues fleeing the school and ends up finding Ayumi near the school's exit gate. He grabs her by the arm and tells her to run. But when he pulls her hand, she stumbles to the ground, confused and not sure what's going on. That same boy Yu bumped into earlier shows up right after and asks if Ayumi is okay. Meanwhile, Yu keeps running and running until he enters a street and turns a corner. Out of nowhere, something crashes violently into a nearby store behind him. Startled, he turns around, not understanding what just happened, and takes off again. Then, another impact hits a trash bin very close to him. This sends him into an even deeper panic, and when he reaches the riverbank, he tries to catch his breath. But as he looks across the road, he sees a man with 4 pairs of glasses staring straight at him. The man suddenly starts sprinting toward him and leaps with full force, grabbing Yu in his arms and jumping over the river in one massive bound, until they land on the opposite side. Yu is left totally speechless and asks what just happened, and the guy replies that his power is called Charge. That ability lets him run at extremely high speeds in one direction, but he hasn't quite figured out how to stop properly yet. Yu thinks that kind of ability is totally broken and wants to know why he's being chased like that. That's when Tamori reappears and explains that they want him to transfer to their school, at least until he becomes an adult. She tells him that there are many people in the world with powers similar to his, but these powers are a temporary anomaly and eventually fade away. At her school, they monitor people like that, precisely to keep them from using their abilities inappropriately and causing trouble. So until his powers disappear, he'll need to stay at the new academy, and she's already received approval from his legal guardian. She even teases him a bit, saying he's attractive, but that doesn't justify having tried to cheat using his abilities. Yu gets angry and tries to attack her, but suddenly she vanishes and beats him up with ease. He asks if her power is invisibility, but Jijiro, the boy with the glasses, explains that her ability only allows her to become invisible to one specific person at a time, while to everyone else, she remains completely visible. Before leaving, Tamori also says that he's going to join the student council, because his power can be extremely helpful in capturing other people, with special abilities like his, who are misusing them. Later that night, Yu returns home and is greeted by his younger sister, named Ayumi. She excitedly tells him that their uncle said both of them have been granted full scholarships to attend Hashinomi Academy and that they'll be transferring soon. To celebrate, she prepares a dish similar to the one their mother used to make. Yu lowers his head, visibly sad, and asks her not to talk about that, saying he's still hurt by their mother for abandoning them because of their uncle after the divorce. Ayumi says she wishes things could have been different, and while talking about their family, she mentions that she sometimes feels as if he's already been someone else from their family before. But Yu answers that it's just the two of them now, and that she needs to stop mixing dreams with reality. Later that night, Ayumi finishes her day gazing at the stars through her telescope. Yu suggests that she watch some late-night program on TV, since, according to him, that's a proven method to make new friends. The next morning, they move into their new dormitory inside the school. Ayumi is incredibly happy to finally have a spacious room to live in. At the end of the day, Yu goes out with Ayumi, that same girl he was interested in before. He talks about the transfer, trying to make it clear, even if only indirectly, that he still wants to see her again. But Ayumi understands the situation and politely turns him down, leaving him completely stunned. Later on, Tamori and Jijiro visit their room to help organize things. They joke around with Yu, introduce themselves to his sister, and give them a hand with everything. Tamori even shows off some tricks using her powers to Ayumi, and the two end up becoming good friends. After everyone leaves, the two siblings have dinner together. The next day, Yu gets ready to face his first day at the new school. Before he heads heads out. Ayumi prepares him a bento with rice and omelet, now topped with a pizza-flavored sauce, since that used to be his favorite dish, though nowadays he doesn't really like it that much anymore. Upon arriving at school, he's greeted by Tamori and Jujiro and immediately asks the question, does everyone there have some kind of special ability? Jujiro explains that most students are still going to awaken their powers or are just starting to show signs of them. Then Tamori explains that in the past, when someone with supernatural abilities was discovered, they would often be taken by force to laboratories where terrifying experiments were performed. But thanks to a certain individual, a protection system was created for children with special powers. Yu tries to shift the topic, pretending it couldn't have been that serious. But Tamori reveals that her older brother was one of the victims who didn't survive the experiments. Yu then asks why he needs to use his powers outside of school, now that he's a member of the student council. Tamori explains that their mission is to locate young people with powers and prevent them from being exposed, whether by convincing them or directly intervening to ensure everyone stays safe. And of course, he'll be compensated for it since he has a younger sister to take care of. Any extra income is more than welcome. Yu accepts the offer and heads to his new classroom to introduce himself. He believes he can maintain the act of being a well-behaved student. But that plan immediately falls apart when he realizes that Tamori and Jujiro are in the same class. And just like that, his strategy of appearing like a model student is ruined. During the break, Yu asks Jujiro how Tamori managed to become student council president in her first year. Jujiro replies that any student can run, but the role usually goes to someone who shows initiative and knows how to use their abilities responsibly. Right after, they decide to head to the cafeteria to grab something to eat, since Yu is tired of always having to face sweet rice with omelet. The cafeteria is extremely crowded, so Jujiro decides to find a workaround. He runs straight to the counter, drops off the money, grabs 4 rib sandwiches, and jumps out through one of the side windows. He reappears behind Yu and hands him the sandwiches. He explains that they usually wear lightweight armor over their uniforms, so they don't get hurt while doing those kinds of stunts. After that, the two head back to class and have a snack together. Yu takes the opportunity to ask about Tamori, wanting to understand why she's so isolated. Jujiro explains that her power makes her invisible to only one person at a time, which means that when she uses it on someone, everyone else just sees her hitting a person who isn't even fighting back. This left a very bad impression of her among the other students. Shortly afterward, Tamori arrives and says that their partner is on the way and that a new mission might come up. The group heads to the student council office, where Yu notices a huge map spread out across the table. Suddenly, a man with long, damp hair shows up. He enters silently, points to a spot on the map, and says the place is Namba High School, then leaves immediately without saying another word. Yu asks who that strange guy was, and the others explain that he's their collaborator, the one who helps locate people with abilities and also determine what kind of powers they have. With that, they all skip class and head straight to Namba High School. Tamori and Jujiro enter the school and begin investigating. They speak with other students, trying to find out if anyone noticed anything unusual in recent days. After a while, Tamori returns to Yu and tells him they've found someone suspicious. She asks him to use his ability to possess the guy and check what's inside his bag. The two of them start running and spot a man fleeing with a backpack. Yu uses his power, enters the man's body, and begins throwing everything out onto the ground. When the possession time runs out, Jujiro restrains the suspect while Tamori searches the bag, finding a black envelope containing several photographs. One of the images shows a student from the school, and another appears to be an X-ray version, revealing even what she's wearing underneath her clothes. Yu confronts the guy, who ends up admitting that he bought those photos, and after being pressured, he reveals that they were sold by someone named Yudu from Class 2E. With that new information, the group rushes to the mentioned classroom and discovers that Yudu is the leader of the archery club. Tamori forces open his locker and finds a large amount of incriminating material. Afterward, she decides to speak with him alone and appears out of nowhere, catching him off guard. She tells him everything she uncovered and asks why he did it. Yudu explains that he needed money because someone in his family was ill and required treatment. Tamori replies that taking this path will only lead him to a worse fate, and if he continues, he will soon be caught and sent to a lab, where he'll be treated like some alien from Area 51. To make matters worse, Yudu tries to take a compromising photo of her to use as blackmail, but Yu enters his body and retrieves the image, handing it back to Tamori. Cornered, Yudu grabs a bow and aims an arrow at her. But Jujiro speeds through the area in an instant and takes the arrow with him, stopping the attack. In the end, they manage to make the boy surrender and resolve the situation. But with everything sorted out, the group heads back to school. On the way, Yu asks Tamori about her brother and what happened to him after being taken by the scientists. She replies that it's not even a secret, and that, if he wants, they can visit her brother together. So, the next day, the two take an express train and then a bus, until they arrive at a massive hospital built on top of a cliff, offering a breathtaking view. While they're on the way there, Tamori begins to open up and tells you how everything started for her. She had just received a scholarship to study at a highly prestigious school. Her father disappeared without a trace and never came back. He went out for that infamous cigarette. So, she was raised solely by her mother, alongside her older brother, Kazuki. Kazuki, on the other hand, dreamed of becoming a professional guitarist and was fighting for his band to get signed by a major record label. One day, their mother gathered both of them and said that she had enrolled them in a boarding school. Kazuki didn't understand and questioned her, saying that he would be moving out soon anyway, so maybe it would help. He also commented that he wasn't really good at much, he just liked playing the guitar. Unlike Tamori, he didn't excel at academics and wasn't considered especially clever. Even so, their mother knelt on the floor and bowed, silently begging them to accept her decision, visibly shattered and not knowing what else to do. Out of respect for their mother, Kazuki ended up agreeing. Tamori says that although the new school was excellent, she could hardly ever see her brother. Every time she tried to talk about him or look for him, classmates would suddenly appear and pull her away. Something different about that school was that after class hours, she had to undergo frequent medical checkups. The truth is that her brother had been identified as someone with supernatural powers. He had the ability to manipulate air by vibrating it at various frequencies. While Tamori believed she was simply attending a normal school, Kazuki was being subjected to absurd and cruel experiments. And when she was finally able to see him again years later, his mind was completely shattered. He didn't know who he was, and even less who she was. The friends who had always surrounded her were actually undercover agents, planted there by the scientists to keep her away from her brother. The school had only kept Tamori around because there was a high chance she might also develop special abilities like him. After witnessing what had been done to her brother, Tamori completely lost her trust in anyone and decided to escape from that place. Shortly after, they arrive at the hospital and go visit her brother. And that's when we see the condition he's in, utterly disturbed, believing he's playing music while screaming and tearing pillows and bed sheets apart. After taking a sedative, he becomes somewhat drowsy, and Tamori takes the opportunity to wheel him outside for some fresh air. She comments that for a long time, she had given up on everything, but that changed when she met the one person she trusts today. It was that person who founded their current school, made space for her to study, and is also covering all the medical expenses for her brother's treatment. Tamori says that no one is really trying to cure Kazuki, because to the scientists, people with powers are merely energy sources, and when one is used up, they simply find another to continue their experiments. At the end of the day, Yu returns to his room, where he is welcomed by his sister Ayumi, who had prepared a vegetable curry for them to have for dinner. Later that night, she says she's super excited to see a rare comet that only passes by Earth once every few hundred years. The next day, Yu wakes up and goes to school. Ayumi prepares another lunchbox for him with sweet rice and an omelet. He says she doesn't need to keep doing that, since hardly anyone brings food, and he wants to try the cafeteria. Maybe it's a good chance to meet other people. She gets a little upset, but ends up saying he can eat it just for today, since she already made it. At lunchtime at school, Yu goes to the cafeteria with Jujiro, using his insane running ability. He gets curry rice for the two of them. Right after, Tamori calls Jujiro and says they need to go to the student council room, since their informants got a new piece of very important information. The two of them head over there, and as always, the guy with wet hair shows up pointing to some random place on the map, and says that this time the person has two powers, channeling and pyrokinesis. Basically, he can communicate with the dead and also control fire. They get intrigued and head to a narrow alley to investigate this person with dual abilities. Tamori starts asking questions and finds a woman who says she saw an older man chasing after Yusa, a famous idol singer from TV. As soon as he hears her name, Yu realizes it's the same singer Ayumi worships. Jujiro then totally loses it, turning into a crazed fan as well. He followed everything about Yusa, including the illegal fan groups on social media. Yu tries to act like a strategist and suggests calling her label to try setting up a meeting. But Tamori immediately cuts him off, saying the world doesn't work like that, and no company would let teenagers meet a famous idol. Meanwhile, she keeps observing the area until she sees a guy turning a corner. She goes after him, but as expected, the guy punches her, throws her to the ground, and runs off. Yu uses his possession ability and enters the man's body, allowing Jijiro to throw him full force against the wall, breaking a few of his ribs. Tomori approaches the man and warns that if he wants to be rescued, he'll have to say where Yusa is and why he's running away. He admits he was just following orders, saying Taiyo TV sent him to capture her, and after that, he's taken away by ambulance, and the group is approached by a red-haired boy. The boy asks what they're doing in that place, and Tomori explains they're trying to find Yusa because they believe she might be in danger and want to help her. He then asks how they know that, and Tomori reveals they have supernatural powers, just like Yusa. The boy ends up really shocked and wants to know how they figured it out, demanding proof. So Tomori activates her invisibility power right in front of him. Impressed, the boy takes them to a hidden underground room where they find Yusa and another guy. Jijiro acts like a crazed fan, but Tomori kicks him away and starts talking seriously with Yusa. Yusa explains that she suffers from a condition where she blacks out and wakes up in different places. Tomori realizes that her true ability is being possessed by the spirits of deceased people and asks the boys if they know more about it. They explain that Yusa had an older sister, Misei, who died in an accident. At that moment, Yusa's personality completely changes, and she starts acting like a total delinquent. Misa takes over and demands to know why her name is being brought up to strangers, and then starts setting everything around her on fire until she sees marshmallows and calms down. Tomori then talks to her and finds out that Misa can take over her sister's body to use her own power, which is controlling fire. She asks who the guys chasing Yusa were, and Misa says they were her old friends. Then she wants to know why they were after her sister, and the boys explain it was because of a cell phone. That device was accidentally taken by Yusa after a recording, but it contained confidential messages from a famous TV producer about corruption and money laundering, the kind of thing that would land someone in jail if the police found out. But even if they returned the device, Yusa's career would be destroyed, since the industry is full of corrupt and criminal people. Mrs. said she would burn down the whole station if they did that to her sister, but Tomori starts arguing with her, saying she needs to keep control if she doesn't want to get her sister arrested. She promises that she has a plan to protect her sister and get revenge too. She then asks the boys to get fire-resistant clothing. Later, they contact the producer and arrange to return the phone through Yusa. However, the guy starts acting disgusting, so Misa takes control of the body again and incinerates two of his guards. Right after that, she manipulates one of the guards to stab his own leg and makes the other one disappear into thin air. She then advances toward the producer, raises her hand, and makes him get punched and kicked until he falls to the ground. She throws the phone at him and threatens that if he messes with her sister's career, he'll meet her in hell, and the guy runs off in fear. The plan ended up working because Misei's childhood friends had replaced the real bodyguards and wore special flame-resistant clothing. That way, she could attack with fire without hurting anyone. Tomori controlled the third guard and made him injure himself, while Jijiro knocked the last one into a crooked tree. Jijiro also joined in, beating up the producer to give the impression that Misa had uncontrollable supernatural powers. Once the problem was resolved, Misa said it'd be best to keep you safe, which meant transferring her to the same school as them. Once the powers disappear, Misa will no longer be able to control her body. Misa agreed to the plan, but the red-haired boy still hadn't fully accepted the idea. He asked for a moment alone with her and opened his heart. He felt guilty for surviving the motorcycle accident that caused her death and confessed that he had wanted to date her, but she chose to move on alone in the afterlife. Misa gave him a light tap, told him to move on and take care of his own life, and accepted the transfer to Roshinomi Academy. With everything settled, Yu went back home and was greeted by his sister as always, super excited to have dinner with him. They sat down, and Yu told her everything that happened with Yu-san, and Ayumi started idolizing her like a celebrity. He mentioned that she might attend their school, and Ayumi was thrilled about the possibility of meeting her in person. The next day, Yu woke up and saw Ayumi preparing breakfast with all her love. On the menu, French toast topped with her secret sauce. That's right, her famous pizza sauce. After devouring it all, Yu ran off to school and met up with Jojuro. In class, everyone was excited about the arrival of Yu-san. Yu was curious to see what would happen once she actually showed up. Soon after, the teacher walked in and introduced the new transfer student who was super famous. The class went wild. Some even started dancing, but they quickly got scolded by the teacher. Yu-san acted all cute as always and asked everyone to calm down, saying that because of work, she'd be be absent now and then, but she wanted to enjoy school life with everyone. Her seat was next to Tamori, and the whole class started gathering around her like she was a star. Later that same day, Tamori showed up, saying they had found another lead. She took the chance to ask Yu-san to join the group this time. They met again in the student council office, and as had become routine, the soaking wet guy came in once more, letting a drop fall right on the map. This time, the new target had the ability to move objects with his mind, in other words, telekinesis. Yu-san asked curiously what exactly that meant. Yu gave a basic explanation, and Tamori mentioned that she had an idea who the target might be, based on the location marked on the map. She then showed the group some photos of Arifumi, one of the players on Kanai Academy's baseball team. He seemed to be quite popular with the younger crowd, and was getting attention thanks to his impressive performance in the last 3 games, even being considered for the professional leagues. Analyzing the videos in slow motion, Tamori noticed that he held the ball incorrectly for the type of pitch he was throwing. That made her suspect that he was manipulating the ball in the air, using his ability to make those insane pitches. Determined to solve the issue, the group went to Kanai Academy and approached Arifumi. Tamori went straight to the point and told him to stop using his powers during the games, explaining that if he made it to the pros, he'd lose those powers, and, as a result, be kicked off the team, which could destroy his career completely. She tried to convince him to play using only effort and his own talent, but he responded with sarcasm, saying he didn't believe any of that nonsense. Tamori showed she wasn't kidding and used her invisibility power right in front of him. At that moment, Misa took over Yusa's body and gave a small fire demonstration too. Yu tried to calm things down, but Misa spat on the ground, completely pissed off, and Jijiro immediately dashed after her like the madman he always is. Meanwhile, Arifumi stood confused, trying to figure out how it was Misa and not Yusa who had done that, getting caught up in the most useless details possible. Tamori keeps insisting with Arifumi, saying that if he continues using that power, he risks being captured by the authorities and ending up as a test subject for scientists, who will investigate until they completely exhaust his ability. Even though he's suspicious, Arifumi still listens when she proposes a solution: a baseball game against her school. If he wins, they won't interfere with him ever again, but if he loses, he'll have to stop using his powers forever. He accepts the challenge, and they all agree to meet on the field at Rashinomi School at noon the following Sunday. On the way back, Yu asks if any power user on their school's team is able to hit Arifumi's manipulated ball. Tamori replies that there's no one with active powers on the team, but to turn the game in their favor, the plan is for their group to infiltrate the team and use their powers strategically, including Yu, of course. Sunday arrives, and with everyone gathered on the field, the two teams face off. The game begins, and in the first moves, things seem pretty balanced. His players struggle with Ocean Academy's pitches, while the balls thrown by Arifumi are nearly impossible to hit. Tamori starts criticizing her own team's performance, and even their pitchers complain, saying they're giving it their all. But every time someone tries to argue back against Tamori's comments, she asks Yu for help. He uses Yusa's charm to make the boys more cooperative and get them back into the game. As the game progresses, they notice Arifumi's catcher is incredibly skilled, since he's able to catch insane balls without using any powers at all. The match goes on and gets more and more intense as the points are fought over. At one point, Tamori decides to allow some powers to be used to make things more exciting. She tells Yu to possess one of the batters in order to score a crucial point. Yu succeeds, but the opposing catcher reacts super fast and secures the base, regaining the lead. With that, the final round approaches, and it's Jijiro's turn at bat. Tamori instructs him to lightly hit the ball and then use his ability to reach first base as fast as possible. Jijiro does exactly what was asked, even if it means crashing into the ground. After that, Misa and Tamori also manage to get good hits, and finally, it's Yu's mission to score the winning point. He asks Tamori how he should do it, and she simply says he has to play fair and calls him an entertainer. Yu goes all out and gives it everything, managing to tie the score after several fouls. However, Arifuma ends up using his power in the final move, and the ball becomes unpredictable. Because of that, Yu ends up missing, but luckily the catcher can't catch the ball either, and that allows Misa to run to the base and secure the team's victory. After this crazy turn of events, Yu feels a strange happiness and wonders why he got so excited about it. He goes over to Tamori, and the two of them talk to Arifuma, saying that, as agreed, he now has to stop using his powers, and he accepts. Arifuma then reveals that he's not a great pitcher, and that, actually, his friend Takato, who plays as the catcher, is the one who really has talent and could reach the pro leagues. But out of loyalty to his friend, he chose to stay by his side, even knowing their school doesn't have the best team, and his plan was to go far and take Takato with him. Tomori then tells him to cheer for his friend from off the field, and that one day, he'll be proud to tell everyone that the great player out there is truly his friend. With everything settled, Arifuma promises never to use his powers again and returns to the team. Before wrapping up, Tomori asks Yu to take control of Arifuma's body for a few seconds, because she wants to test something. Yu does it and stays in his body for 5 seconds before returning to normal, asking what she wanted to check. Tomori simply replies that he'll have to wait to find out, and after that, as always, Yu goes back home to have dinner with his sister. He takes the opportunity to watch the new commercial and the new song released by Yusa. A few days pass, and, once again, the entire classroom gathers around Yusa as if she were a star surrounded by excited fans. Meanwhile, Tomori stays in her own world, calmly enjoying music through her headphones just like she usually does. Out of nowhere, a group of girls approaches her, grabs her by force out of the classroom, and drags her to the back of the school, far from everyone. Yu, curious about all that movement, decides to secretly follow them, watching from the corner. He ends up witnessing a tense scene as the girls gang up on Tomori, push her against the wall, and start hitting her mercilessly. After beating her and leaving her lying on the ground, they simply walk away as if nothing had happened. Yu runs over to her, shocked, and asks what that was all about. Still on the ground, Tomori coldly explains that ever since her first confrontation with those girls, a lot of people stopped liking her blunt and aggressive way of dealing with problems, and now those people are deciding to take revenge through violence. Yu immediately remembers that time she hit him by the river and starts to understand what she meant. Even so, he thinks that kind of attitude is completely absurd and asks why she doesn't just fight back or defend herself. She replies that she simply doesn't have the energy for that, and at that moment, she notices she received a message from the collaborator who helps their group and heads straight to the student council room. Once there, she gathers everyone, and Yu is worried when he sees her bruised face. Soon after, Mrs. shows up and suggests that they should get revenge on the attackers. But Tomori, keeping calm, says she doesn't want to retaliate and brushes off the topic. That's when that weird kid who always shows up suddenly appears with another fresh piece of information. This time, he brings a map and points to a mountainous region as a new point of interest. The group's new target seems to be someone with the ability to fly, and apparently, Tomori had already heard of this individual. She takes the document, lays it on the floor, and shows that there have been several recent reports of a winged man being seen flying over those mountains. These sightings are still mostly circulating in obscure forums and shady groups, like the cults in the Nisha region. But if they keep happening, it'll only be a matter of time before the media starts covering the case. That's why Tomori stresses that they need to act urgently. Right after, we see Yu accompanying Tomori at the supermarket, helping with the shopping for the mission. She starts filling the cart with an absurd amount of corn, saying that barbecue isn't fun without corn. After that, she goes straight to the meat section and picks out some steaks, ribs, and sausages. Trying to be helpful, Yu adds some vegetables, bell peppers, and other greens. They end up arguing over the ingredient choices, and meanwhile, Jujiro and Yusa are watching from a distance, commenting on how the two look like a real couple, like one of those perfectly synced pairs. However, Jujiro quickly changes the subject and starts celebrating the fact that he finally managed to get some alone time with Yusa, something he'd wanted for a while. After they all grab what they need, the group heads straight to the mountainous area. Tomori gives out the instructions, with the boys in charge of carrying tents and heavy gear, while the girls handle the food prep. Yu asks if they'll be spending the night there, and she says yes. They'll stay as long as it takes until they find the flyer. With everything ready, the group heads to the campsite marked in the magazine. They begin setting everything up and start their new mission. While putting up the tent, Yu nearly falls into an old, deep, dry well. Tomori bursts out laughing at the sight and wastes no time teasing him, saying it would have been hilarious to see him fall in with all that weight. After that, the group spends the rest of the day cooking together, enjoying the food and chatting. Everyone is having a good time, and as night falls, Yu starts to wonder where Tomori went. He decides to walk through the forest a bit and ends up near a cliff. There he finds Tomori sitting alone on a stone bench, listening to music with her headphones on, while the sky above is unbelievably beautiful, full of stars. Yu approaches and sits beside her, curious to know what she listens to so often. He brings it up, and she hands him her MP4 so he can listen too. Tomori explains that it's It's a post-rock band called The End. That was her brother's favorite band before he lost his mental stability. As soon as he hits play, Yu feels something intense, a sense of loneliness, but at the same time, a kind of freedom. The music stirs something deep in him, and he ends up praising the sound. Seeing how much he liked the song, Tomori lights up and decides to give the MP4 to him as a gift. She comments that the band's vocalist is blind, and maybe that's exactly what gives their music such emotion and depth. As Yu looks into her eyes, he realizes it's the first time he's seen this excited and carefree side of Tomori. She then decides to open up and says that, for now, she spends her days recording videos of people who misuse their abilities, like he once did, but that her biggest dream is to someday shoot an official music video for The End. After that more intimate moment, the two return to the campsite, and Tomori says they'll take turns keeping watch. Each shift will last 4 hours, and the boys can sleep first. Yu and Jujiro go rest, and during his sleep, Yu has a dream that stirs something inside him, something nostalgic, where a brother appears next to Ayumi, just like that other time, and it leaves him intrigued, trying to understand what it could mean. The next day, they take the chance to catch some fish and cook everything over an open flame. They also take separate baths, and during all that, Yu notices Jujiro has a surprisingly strong physique. He explains he always wears armor underneath his clothes because of his abilities, so he has to stay in shape to handle the weight and the impact. But a day goes by, and Yu says he wants to go home. He says he's worried about his younger sister, who's all alone. Tomori says they can't let him leave now and asks him to relax, because she's sure their mission will end the next day. The following day, while they're preparing food, a boy in blue clothing shows up. He walks in asking what they're doing there, and Tomori replies saying they're all high school students who ran away from home. They're trying to live in that place, and the guy doesn't buy the story, saying he'll call the police to take them all back. But Tomori fires back, saying if he does that, he'll get taken away too. He's confused and asks why, and she explains that the place they're in is private property. And looking at him, he seems pretty suspicious too, just being there alone. He tries to come up with some excuse, but Tomori instantly catches the lie and lays it out. She asks if he's the guy with the power to fly. According to her, he probably chose those mountains to train in secret, away from everyone else. But when he saw that they were camping there and didn't seem like they'd be leaving anytime soon, he got nervous. Trying to play it off, the guy chuckles, turns around, and says it's all nonsense. But Tomori steps in front of him and says she recorded everything, including him using his ability. It's all on camera. That's when the guy snaps and lunges at her to grab the camera. But in the rush, he ends up falling into the same deep, dry well that Yu almost fell into earlier, the one Tomori had covered with grass. With no other choice, he's forced to activate his flying power to get out. He leaps from the pit and charges straight at Tomori, trying to snatch the camera. Yu asks Jujiro to do something, but he says he can't interfere with Tomori that close. As soon as the guy gets his hands on the camera, he takes off flying. Yu then decides to use his ability. He enters the guy's body and manages to control him, but ends up getting dragged along too. When he opens his eyes, he's staring at a breathtaking view of the city, like he's mid-skydive. With no apparent escape, he puts all his effort into using the flying ability in the guy's body, breaking the fall and saving his own life. A few seconds later, he returns to his own body, and the guy hits the ground with just a few scrapes. Tomori and the rest of the group gather around him, reveal who they really are, and explain they're there to protect him. They say his powers will one day disappear, and ask what would happen if that occurred while he was flying. They also warn him that there are scientists out there looking to study him like a lab rat, curious to find out how his body is able to fly. She finishes by saying she's sure he doesn't want to end up as a test subject. The guy introduces himself as Sato and says he thought he was the only one in the world with powers. He says he had a dream that he was chosen and was called the Great Hero Sato of the Skies. Everyone looks at him with a what the hell kind of face. Then everyone returns to their respective homes. Yu gets back and checks on his sister Ayumi, who doesn't look very happy. He realizes she really is the best little sister ever, and she gives him an amazing bowl of homemade veggie noodles. Yu notices there's no pizza sauce in the bowl and thanks God for that. He asks her about the sauce, and she says she wanted to add it because it's a secret family ingredient. But they ran out and, for some reason, the security guard at the gate wouldn't let her go out alone, so she couldn't buy more. Yu silently thanks the guard for saving his life, and compliments Ayumi, saying her food is even better without that pizza sauce. After that, she says she has a bunch of stuff to tell him now that he's back, and reveals that a boy from her class asked her out, but she turned him down. Yu says that could have been a great turning point in her life, and that he's not against it as long as it's a decent guy. Out of nowhere, Ayumi sneezes, and her brother puts his hand on her forehead and realizes she has a slight fever. He gives her some medicine and tells her to snuggle up in his bed, saying she should rest through the night. The next morning, Ayumi is still a bit unwell and feverish, so her brother tells her to stay in bed and rest, saying he'll call the school to report her absence. After that, he heads to school and goes through the day normally. At lunchtime, that weird guy with the dampest hands in the world shows up and points to the dorms on the map. He says that the energy this time is called collapse, and everyone starts wondering what that power could be. Yu is already worried just because the name isn't something like destruction after all. Collapse sounds like it could make structures fall apart. Tamori says it's not unusual for people to awaken powers at that school, since that's the school's whole purpose. But she also wonders why there's a student in the dorms at that hour. Yu suggests it might be someone who's sick, someone sneezing, and that makes him uncomfortable as he thinks about Ayumi. Tamori notices his expression and asks what's going on, and he says his sister is sick in the dorm, so he's worried. She comments that it's very likely that siblings develop powers if one of them has already awakened, and says they should go check it out. Yu agrees to go with Tamori and says bringing Yusa might cheer Ayumi up too, but bringing Jijiro wouldn't be a good idea since he's too aggressive. Yu even thinks about possessing him and jumping off the building, but Tamori notices and calls out to Jijiro. She asks him to look out the window to see if anything looks strange, and when he goes over, Tamori straight up kicks him out the window. She calls an ambulance while Yusa stands there horrified, trying to understand what just happened. After that, they all decide to buy rice porridge for Ayumi. Yu suggests they all have dinner together that night, and he notices that Yusa is always alone with her sister absent, and Tamori is practically an orphan with a brother in the hospital and trust issues. He feels sorry for both of them and insists they all eat together in his dorm and go grocery shopping as a group. After picking up some pricey groceries, the girls go to Yu's place with him, and before they go in, he asks Yusa to hide her presence right away because Ayumi would get so excited she'd start having nosebleeds. Yusa, being all adorable, puts on a mask and a pair of glasses and calls herself Superman. They all go inside and notice Ayumi's classmates are there to visit her. Her best friend is the class rep, Anamura, and she stands up to greet everyone and introduces herself. After that, a brown-haired boy stands up and says he's Oikawa. Anamura reveals he's the guy Ayumi rejected, though he hasn't given up yet and wants to stay friends. There's also a purple-haired girl named Kanishi. Everyone says goodbye to Ayumi, and then Tamori walks in and greets her, and the two sit down happily. But at that moment, Yusa appears. Ayumi recognizes her instantly and starts having a nosebleed from the excitement. Tamori helps stop the bleeding a few times, and then everyone sits down for a happy meal. After dinner, Yusa says goodbye because she has work as an idol, and Tamori offers to do the dishes and hands Yu a towel. Looking at the two of them, Ayumi asks if they're dating and gives them a little tease. They both deny it with the most neutral expressions possible, and after that, they give Ayumi some medicine and put her to bed. She says she doesn't want to sleep because she had a nightmare the night before, and Tamori tries to ask about the details, but stops halfway and steps outside with Yu. She tells him to try getting his sister to talk because the dream might reveal the kind of power she awakened, and even if they're not 100% sure yet, she's a strong candidate. After Tamori leaves, Yu enters the room and asks Ayumi what happened. She says she dreamed of the floor and walls cracking and breaking apart around her. The next day, Yu tells the others, and they suspect it could be a very dangerous power, one that might even harm the user. That's why they decide to keep Ayumi in the dorms as long as possible to avoid any accident that might hurt others. The following morning, Ayumi is already feeling better and wants to go to school, but Yu asks her to rest one more day. She really doesn't like the idea and gets up, and as soon as he leaves, she gets dressed and sneaks out of the dorm to go to school anyway. Back at school, Yu and Jijiro are enjoying their lunch break like always, but suddenly he gets a call from Tamori. She tells him to meet her in the office and reveals that Ayumi went to school. Yu gets super worried, and everyone runs to the middle school building to check if she's okay. Meanwhile, during lunch, Oikawa tries once again to invite Ayumi to eat with him, but Namura helps her escape and lets him go. In the end, Ayumi meets Kanishi, who is overwhelmed with jealousy because she wanted to date Akawa. However, ever since she transferred to their school, all he's ever thought about is Ayumi. Kanishi then grabs a paper cutter and extends the blade, saying that now it's Ayumi's turn to suffer. Ayumi tries to calm her down, but when she sees it's not working, she starts running toward the rooftop. But to make things worse, the terrace door is locked, and Kanishi ends up cornering her. Right at that moment, Kanishi herself starts climbing the stairs, holding the blade. Between panic and desperation, the girl's ability awakens. Everything around begins to break apart, as if the entire building is collapsing. Kanishi loses her balance and falls, but she is saved. Only Ayumi is not so lucky and ends up buried under the rubble. Outside, Yu and the others rush toward the school, jumping over a wall and trying to get there in time. But then they see the farthest part of the building collapsing. Yu sprints in that direction only to find his sister crushed under the debris. After receiving medical treatment, Yu wakes up, and the first thing he asks about is his sister. The doctors deliver the news she didn't survive. He is completely shocked, unable to accept what just happened. He remains in that state until the day of Ayumi's funeral, and later he returns to the dormitory, a lonely place with no one to welcome him, except for that curry with a strange taste of pizza. He starts crying, blaming himself, wondering if he ever showed how much he truly cared for her, and he ends the day crying until he finally falls asleep. The next morning, he wakes up on the floor with deep, sunken eyes and goes to the fridge to check for something ready to eat. He ends up finding a box of instant noodles Yu had bought when he first moved in. He decides to eat that, and the days pass, then turn into weeks, and soon it's nearly a month with him locked inside the room, surrounded by blankets, with the floor covered in empty cups, and his gaze growing darker each day. Jiaojuru and Yusa show up several times bringing homemade food, trying to get him to eat with them, but he always refuses. He doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't respond, just stays there. Even Misa tries to take over and speak with him, but with a reinforced door between them. She understands he's still deeply mourning his sister's loss and decides to give up. In the end, they leave him alone there. Sometime later, they call Yu's first crush from his old school. She tries to cheer him up, but he won't even look at her, feeling completely empty inside. He only asks her for a favor to buy one more cup of noodles since he's out of supplies. She invites him to go with her, but he refuses and even gets angry, saying she's not his mother. Hurt and shocked, she leaves, and Yu returns to his routine of isolation and deep sadness. When his food finally runs out, he decides to go out and restock, but when he opens the door, he finds 2 security guards and the dorm's supervisor waiting for him. He realizes they're trying to take him by force, so he uses his power to control one of them and knocks the other down. With that, he escapes and goes straight to the bank to withdraw all the money from his account. He decides to disappear from the map, to flee the school to a place where no one can find him. He ends up living in a net cafe for a few days, like in those anime cliché breakdowns, but soon gets bored and goes out for a walk. He sees a stand selling sweet dangos, tries one and likes it, and right after that, he discovers some first-person shooter games and decides to give them a try. He quickly starts enjoying the idea of killing inside the game and becomes obsessed with sweets and arcades, until one day he loses his patience with 2 guys who had been hogging his favorite machine for too long. He confronts them, but they don't like it and drag him under a dark bridge near the train tracks. There, they try to beat him up, but Yu uses his powers and makes them attack each other. In the end, he wins and even stabs the last one in the leg with dango sticks. A few days later, he's approached by the boss of the gang, Hosoya Amada, who wants to know if he's really the guy who took down an entire gang by himself. The leader tries to act tough, but Yu couldn't care less. He dominates the whole gang easily and defeats everyone alone. At the end, he even threatens to stab the boss in the eye with a dango stick and asks if he wants to be known as the one-eyed crybaby. From that point on, Yu begins a path of self-destruction, challenging any gang that crosses his path just for fun. One day, he comes across a random gang member carrying a small bag of drugs. He thinks it might be fun and decides to try it, but right at that moment, he takes a kick to the face from a certain familiar blonde. She finally reveals herself, saying she won't let him cross that line. He asks how long she had been following him, and she replies that it's been since the very first day, ever since Yumi awakened her ability. She says she followed him to the net cafe, the arcade, through the fights, everything. She says she feels she's also to blame for everything that happened, and that maybe she could have protected Yumi better, perhaps even prevented the tragedy. But despite it all, she won't allow him to lose his humanity. Hearing that, Yu finally begins to regain awareness and asks what he should do. She makes a call and says she'll take him to eat something healthy, which he refuses. But then she proposes a deal. If he takes just one bite, she'll stop bothering him. Yu accepts and goes with her to Jijiro's house, which is empty tonight since his family family isn't there. They go inside, and she tells him to watch some TV while she finishes preparing dinner. Later, he wakes up to a plate of rice with omelet, and as soon as he takes the first bite, he realizes it tastes exactly like his sister's version because of the secret ingredient. Tomori explains that she found their mother's recipe notebook in Yumi's room and decided to use it. She believes Yumi was trying to recreate the dish after their mother's death, since it was Yuu's favorite when he was a child. In that moment, Yuu remembers the last bento Yumi made for him, rice and omelet. He used to complain back then, but now all he can do is cry. It was the last meal his dear little sister made with so much care, so he eats everything while the tears roll down his face. Right after, she offers him a tissue and a cup of tea, letting him rest. Yuu asks what he should do next from now on. Tomori suggests he return to the student council. He recalls the promise they made not to get involved anymore, and questions whether all of this wasn't planned from the start. Tomori answers that not only did he break the promise, but he also cleaned his plate, so he must have been eager to meddle again in her business. Yuu laughs and thanks her for the support, deciding to rejoin the student council. The next day, he gets ready and leaves the house, determined to start a new chapter. He says farewell to Ayumi's memory and heads to school, where he's warmly welcomed by Yusa and the other classmates. Inside the classroom, everyone reacts with envy because he's getting direct attention from the class goddess. Yuu laughs, realizing that the obsessive fan group is still there and just the same as always. During lunch break, he goes to the cafeteria with Jujiro and gives him a special beef curry, a limited edition meal they used to share before Ayumi's tragedy. Yuu notices how everyone around him is trying their best to make him feel welcomed, and he's truly grateful for it. Right after, they receive a message from Tomori asking them to come to the student council room. They think it might be another clue about the infamous stripper, but upon arriving, they find it's just Yusa wanting to hear opinions about her newest music video. Jujiro, as excited as ever, nearly flies from joy, and everyone gets comfortable to watch the video. After it ends, Yuu asks Jujiro to give his fans review. The response is pure silence, just an expression of complete bliss. Tomori, being more critical, gives it an 8 out of 10, but deducts points for acting like an idol at school. Once that moment passes, Tomori reveals the real reason she gathered them all. She needs to choose someone to go with her to a concert happening the next day. She shows 2 tickets and says they need to decide who'll go. The choice is made by elimination. Yusa says she doesn't understand punk rock and isn't interested. Jujiro says he only listens to heavy metal and declines immediately, so only Yuu remains, and after one final push from Tomori, he agrees to go. Later, on his way home, Yuu runs into a blind girl with red hair. She mentions that she doesn't like when people avoid her path, and the sound of her voice triggers a strong memory in Yuu, the same feeling he had when he first heard Jane's songs on Tomori's MP4. He considers asking if she really is the famous vocalist, but before he can, she approaches and asks if he knows any place that sells Malden Hakui. Yuu understands she's looking for a modern version of okonomiyaki with yakisoba, and decides to take her to a local restaurant. He orders a plate for himself too, and the entire time, he feels the urge to text Yumi saying he'll be home late, or to go back and eat the dinner she would have made. The longing hits hard, and he lets out a quiet, sad sigh, something she notices. Confirming his suspicion, she reveals that she is Jane, the lead singer of the band. She asks if something difficult happened to him and offers to listen. They sit outside, and he ends up opening up about losing his sister. She comments that someone must have been the light that pulled him out of that darkness, and the only person that comes to Yuu's mind is Tomori. At that moment, he remembers her brother, Kazuki, and asks for a favor. He tells Jane that Kazuki is a guitarist who deeply admires her work, and that he was close to achieving something great before losing his sanity. He asks if she could visit him at the hospital, and she warmly agrees to go with him. Before leaving, Yuu calls Tomori and tells her about meeting Jane, and asks if she would like to meet her too. But Tomori says that although she enjoys the music, she's not the type to get excited about meeting celebrities. So Yuu suggests that she go visit her brother instead, and asks her to inform the hospital about their visit. Later that night, the two head to the hospital, and on the way, Jane shares a part of her difficult story, telling him that she even gave up her eyesight to achieve the success she has today. At the hospital, she sings for Kazuki, and the song brings a moment of clarity to him. He's even able to remember Tomori. After that, Yuu heads back home with Jane, and along the way, he calls Tomori to tell her about the miracle that just happened. She says she already knows because the nurse told her everything, and she ran all the way there but almost missed them at the entrance. She thanks Yuu for everything he's done for her and her brother. brother, and tells him to get ready for the concert the next day. Later on, Jane's manager shows up to pick her up and scolds her afterward. She says goodbye to Yu, telling him she'd love to see him again. He promises he'll be at the show, and she says she'll be singing with him in her thoughts. The next day, Yu goes with Tamori, and the two enjoy the day together. They buy several band-themed phone accessories, and finally, they arrive at the concert venue. Jane is performing, singing her song, and in the middle of the show, Yu begins to feel something strange. Out of nowhere, a wave of nostalgia hits him, and then Jane switches to another song. And for some reason, Yu instantly knows what song it is. Jane starts the new track in an unexplainable way, and Yu recognizes it. It feels like he's heard it before, and suddenly, a flood of memories rush into his mind, causing him to collapse to the ground. As he falls, he enters a dream where he relives memories of another life, in a facility full of children with powers similar to his. In that place, he wakes up hearing the new song while sitting beside Ayumi, who is enjoying the voice of her favorite artist, Yusa. They stand up and head to lunch, and Yu starts complaining, saying the food will taste like medicine because of the chemicals they use to boost their abilities. Ayumi comments that even so, she believes curry has the power to make everyone happy, and she wishes her older brother, Shunsuke, was there to eat with them. Yu lowers his head and tells Ayumi that he carries a very dangerous power, and that's why he's under surveillance. He reveals that he has the ability to travel through time. During the meal, he sits next to a guy with long brown hair named Kumagami, who is Shunsuke's best friend. Shunsuke usually calls him Pooh because the beginning of his name means bear, and it stuck as a nickname. Yu believes that Pooh is also hiding an incredibly powerful ability, and that if the scientists ever find out, they'll capture him and keep him locked up. His power is called Sake, and it allows him to absorb the special abilities of anyone he possesses. With this talent being the central part of the plan, Yu joins a group of children, including Pooh, and their goal is to keep Shunsuke frozen so he can help build a better future. Pooh hands him a piece of paper with the name of a boy who has telepathy, so that Yu can steal his power. He also gives him a spray used to cause moderate destruction. After lunch, Yu returns to his room with Ayumi, but along the way, scientists show up and take Ayumi away because it's the day for her experiments. She forgot to tell him about it, and they lock Yu inside. After some time in isolation, he hears loud noises and alarms going off. When the door opens, one of the lead scientists appears and reveals he knows Yu's true power. He says they tried to activate Ayumi's strength, and it caused a collapse of the entire block. Now they want to study her body and discard it if necessary. Hearing that, Yu runs desperately to find his brother and meets Shishino, a boy with the ability to phase through walls. He lets Yu take his power and tells him to also steal telekinesis to try to save his brother. Yu manages to free Shunsuke from his restraints, and Shunsuke uses his time leap ability, while Yu gets struck down by the base's security. That's when he wakes up in a hospital, confused about everything that happened. He remembers that both he and Ayumi always had the feeling that they had an older brother, so maybe all of that was real. Right after that, a brown-haired guy shows up saying it looks like Yu has recovered his memories. That guy is Kumagami, the same one who always helps the group by locating people with powers. Yu asks if all of that really happened, and he replies that those questions should be asked to his brother. But before that, he has something important to say. It's about Yu's sister. Yu gets upset and asks how he plans to save someone who's already dead. And then Kumagami says that for that, Yu needs to better understand his brother Shunsuke's ability. Now that all the memories have returned to his head, when she hears the name, Tamori asks if it's the same Shunsuke she met, and Kumagami confirms it. Turns out he's the guy who saved Tamori and also founded the school she mentioned to Yu. After that, he calls them both to go with him to a high-tech base hidden in the forest. There Yu finally meets his brother again and notices he's gone blind. But even so, Yu is still suspicious of everything. Shunsuke greets Tamori and praises her for all her effort. Then he asks Yu to sit and listens to everything that happened since his last time jump. The story starts when he woke up 3 years before everyone was captured by the scientists, still living with his younger siblings. He finds Pooh and gathers his friends while trying to fix everything. But in the end, they were just a bunch of kids trying to escape from trained and armed soldiers. The plan kept failing again and again, and Shunsuke would come up with a new strategy and jump back in time to try again. This happened many times, and with each jump, he felt his eyesight getting worse. Until the last jump when he decided to raise money and buy a safe zone to protect kids with powers. This time he succeeds, but the price was the total loss of his vision. He then asked Madoki and Miyatamari to erase from his two siblings' minds any memory of him so that he could act more freely and protect them. Now he asks Yu to use his power and go back to the day Ayumi was sick in order to save her. He says that when they return to the new timeline, Yu will find him again and tell him everything so he'll know how to act. Yu asks if she knew all of this from the start, and she says yes, because of how Kumagami's power works and from what happened when she went after him. They found out they were wrong about Yu's powers, but chose to keep that discovery a secret and why. They were afraid of what he could become if he kept absorbing powers without any control. After that, Yu wakes up and absorbs Shunsuke's power and wakes up beside Ayumi on the night she got sick. The next day, he goes to school like nothing happened. And there, Kumagami, still soaked, shows up and reveals that one of the students in the dorm has the collapse power. Yu immediately suspects it's his sister and calls Tomori and Yusa to go with him. The rest of the group stays the same, but soon after Yu pulls away to talk. He decides to be honest with Tomori and asks if she would believe him if he said he came from the future. She says yes, which makes him super relieved. He even thanks her for saving his life in another timeline where he was completely shattered. With that, he asks for her help to convince the others, and the next day, the whole group gets organized to invade Ayumi's school. That night, Yu steals his sister's powers to stop her from losing control again, like what happened before. He hides in the closet next to the door that leads to the rooftop, ready to stop any attack from Kenichi. When the critical moment comes, Yu steps in, confronts Kenichi, and lets Tomori handle her blade and manages to make her retreat, thus saving his sister from the same fate as before. By doing this, the Medoc from this reality ends up getting a glimpse of Yu's actions and goes to find him along with Kumagami. Yu confirms that he's from another timeline and proves it by calling Kumagami by his sweet nickname, Pooh. They then decide to go visit Shunsuke together. The three drive to the mountain area where they meet Shunsuke, who's blind. He says he brought them there because he believed Yu had activated his looter ability, but Yu tells him the whole truth, that he traveled through time, and after hearing everything, Shunsuke believes him and comments that, even though it's extremely rare, recovering memories from another timeline happened to him too. Then he tells Yu that he needs to stay at that base and do research until his powers vanish. Yu asks why, and Shunsuke explains that he now holds the most powerful ability on the planet. And now, with the addition of time control, many groups from other timelines and organizations from around the world will want to capture him and use him as a weapon. That's why the safest place for him is that facility considered the most protected in Japan. Then they take a tour through the lab. Inside, they meet Dr. Titsumi Ushi, who surprisingly is the same guy who saved Yu in the future from another timeline. In that research center, everyone is focused on developing a vaccine to prevent people from continuing to develop powers. Yu asks if those people there are sick and takes the chance to ask if they know about long-period comets. Yumi says yes because she likes studying that kind of stuff. The doctor praises her knowledge and explains about the Charlotte Comet that passes near Earth every 75 years. When it happens, it releases a special dust in the atmosphere. Those who inhale or come into contact with that dust activate hidden powers in their DNA, usually during adolescence when emotions are more intense. Around 400 years ago, the comet passed so close to Earth that many people developed these abilities. Those people were called witches, which led to witch hunts, something that still persists in parts of the world to this day. The people there are trying to create a vaccine to stop those powers from showing up in future generations. And after hearing that, Yu agrees to stay there with Yumi, even though he misses his school friends. He believes he can form bonds with this new group and even introduces his childhood friends to them. Everyone likes Yumi right away, and she helps Yu feel welcomed. They invite him to play and have fun, and everything goes well until Kumagami gets info about another power user. Yu ends up discovering a secret. Kumagami never needed to wrap himself to get rid of powers. In truth, he just faked it to hide who he really was, an idea that came from Shunsuke. Yu asks if he's going back to the student council, and he says yes, but Yu can't go with him. After that, Yu catches a ride with the driver, Furuki. He asks to be taken to the school, but something strange happens. Furuki doesn't turn into the school street and goes toward an abandoned factory. That's where he reveals he has a family, and under Shunsuke's rules, they don't recruit adults with families, because they could be blackmailed. Wanting to be useful, Furuki hid that, but the plan failed when his family was taken hostage by a foreign mafia. The criminals demanded he keep it secret and also kidnap Kumagami. Furuki then asks for forgiveness, and Kumagami says he understands and that he should focus on protecting his family. They go together to the factory, and there the foreigners show up. They tell Furuki they have one last mission for him, to take Yu to the location. The driver is forced to accept and is then released. Next, the thugs torture Kumagami, breaking his teeth and injecting him with truth serum to extract all the info. They also kidnap Nao, taking her as as a hostage and calls Shunsekir, threatening that if they don't bring Yu alone, all the hostages, including Furuki's family, will be eliminated. The group gathers to come up with a plan, but no one can think of something that works. They even consider using Yu's time jump, but the plan gets even worse when they find out that Furuki's family was taken hostage right at the time when they decided to build that secret facility. Nothing guarantees things will go the same way this time. Shishino suggests Yu go alone to face the enemies by himself. If it looks like things are getting out of control, he can always activate the time jump. After all, that's their only option right now. Shunsuke tries to convince his younger brother to accept the mission, but Yu starts to panic with the responsibility and admits he doesn't feel any confidence that this will work. In the middle of all that stress, he nearly loses control and activates the collapse by accident, which could have killed everyone there. But Shunsuke hugs him tightly, and like a good older brother, he says that if Yu can't handle it, he can use the time jump and come back to this exact moment. With that emotional push, Yu goes to the group of foreign mafia members, and there he decides to use his power on the two henchmen who have no abilities. Just to make sure they aren't armed or hiding anything. Since both pass the test, he lowers his guard a bit, but is surprised by the assassin who attacks him from behind. He activates the time jump, but the girl manages to strike his right eye with a fast hit. He ends up losing his eye, and Yu automatically loses the ability to use his time travel power. He then thinks about using the collapse, but the mafia warns that if he does that, two hostages trapped underground will end up dying. Yu tries to use telekinesis to turn the tables, but the assassin keeps advancing non-stop and stabs him multiple times as if she were a monster. Without leaving his body, he ends up triggering the collapse, destroying the entire place. Amid the destruction, the only person who ends up dying is Kumagami, who sacrifices himself to protect the others. At that moment, Shunsuke and the others also arrive at the site of the battle, and inside the factory, Shunsuke drags himself desperately, trying to find Kumagami. When he sees his friend's impaled body, he approaches and begs him not to die. Kumagami still manages to speak with his last breath, saying he knows Shunsuke came up with that nickname, Pooh, all by himself, and right after that, he dies. 2 days later, Yu wakes up in the hospital after undergoing surgery. Shishino updates him on everything that happened and confirms that the tumor is fine, but unfortunately, Kumagami didn't survive. This news leaves him deeply shaken, and he immediately puts himself in his brother's place. He feels the same pain he felt when he lost Ayumi and believed he would never see her again. At first, he is in shock and blames himself for everything, but his brother's friends try to comfort him, saying that mistakes were made on both sides, and that he does not have to carry all that weight alone. Later, Ayumi appears and asks what happened, trying to cheer him up. After that, the days go by, and classmates and student council members start visiting Yu, wishing him good luck with his recovery. Among them are Jijiro, Yusa, and several others. When Yusa arrives bringing food, Yu asks Misa to take control of the body and talks to her about what might exist after death, if there is anything left after everything. And this conversation makes Misa reflect and realize how the few moments she lived thanks to Yu's power were truly meaningful. Later, during a visit to his hometown where he promotes peace between powered individuals and civilians, Misa appears once again and praises his parents. This ends her story in a more symbolic way and with a touch of tenderness. With time, Yu begins to regain movement and puts effort into physical therapy to recover. Once he is strong enough, he visits his brother and sees how devastated Shunsuke is, completely worn out by the death of his best friend. Even so, he manages to stay calm and warns Yu that foreign organizations will likely try to invade Japan and that they will be targets once again. Shaken but focused, Yu returns to his room and finds Tomori waiting for him. She talks to him about a rather radical idea involving his power. He could absorb everyone's abilities, preventing anyone from ever using powers again, and by doing so, prevent further tragedies. The plan was insane. He would have to travel across the entire planet, taking powers from an absurd number of people, millions, maybe billions, and the mental impact of that would be completely unpredictable. There would be no way of knowing if he would still be himself by the end of it all. Even so, Yu thinks a lot about it and realizes that, despite everything, this might be the only real chance to ensure a peaceful future. He stands up and tells Tomori that he is going to do it, that he will carry out this mission for her. He confesses that he fell in love with her and that his feelings have grown ever since she pulled him out of the darkness of depression. Tomori, upon hearing that, says she probably only did it out of guilt or responsibility and that he doesn't need to sacrifice himself like this. But Yu insists and says that he has already made his decision, that he will do it for her and also for the friends and everyone he has met. Hearing this, Tomori finally falls in love with him as well, and she asks him to fulfill one promise. promise that he comes back, that when it's all over, she'll be waiting for him. If he fulfills that, she will be ready for anything. To seal the deal, she asks him to take her power away, and he obeys, showing that he is truly determined to go through with the plan. The next day, Yu tells his brother about his decision and says that he has already begun. Everyone in Shunsuk's group gathers and supports the idea, promising to protect Japan while he handles the rest of the world. Then, he begins to prepare for this impossible mission, and on the day of his departure, he receives a small translation booklet as a gift and promises he will keep his word, no matter what happens. His journey begins in Singapore, where he buys a list with the names of ability users. After that, he heads to the Philippines and steals the power of a local leader, someone with the ability to read minds. Using this power, he finds out about a boy named Angelo, who works like a power radar. He locates the boy and steals his ability, which allows you to see a map showing where all the other users are. From there, he begins a relentless hunt through the Philippines, taking one power after another. Next, he travels to South Africa, where he takes down several smaller gangs. The entire world starts talking about him, and he earns the nickname One-Eyed Reaper, with a massive bounty placed on his head. After that, he heads to Egypt and steals a new ability that allows him to know exactly which power he has just absorbed. With that, his journey becomes increasingly efficient, and he begins accumulating abilities like mental translation, resistance to sleep, and even one that causes diseases to worsen. In the mountains of Afghanistan, he finds a group of children who have not yet manifested any powers. He uses his disease ability to force their awakening, and right after that, he steals their powers. He returns to a few countries to make sure no new users have appeared, and in India, for the first time, he faces a military group that tries to stop him. He defeats all of them easily, using his force field and several other accumulated powers. In Peru, he meets a young woman who used healing abilities to help people, but even so, he absorbs that power as well. He even considers using Time Leap to save Kumagami, but then decides he has already interfered too much with the laws of time. In Cuba, he feels the weight of so many powers and accidentally activates the collapse, destroying a building. He uses telekinesis uncontrollably, almost killing an innocent person, but manages to hold back. After that, he travels to Saudi Arabia and tries to get some sleep. But when he wakes up, he realizes he has lost all sense of where he was and what he was doing. Upon seeing the news, he discovers that he entered a state of unconscious rage and destroyed several things. He decides that from now on, he can no longer sleep, and soon after, he arrives in Italy. He sits down to rest, but is immediately attacked by armed mafia members. While fighting, he starts questioning himself, asking why he is doing this, why he is traveling, or what the reason for all of this ever was. He sees the little translation booklet and tries to remember Tamori, but her image is blurred in his mind. But even without remembering her clearly, he feels that she was important and continues his mission. After an entire year stealing abilities, facing criminals and armed groups, Yu is on the verge of collapse, but the feeling he once had for Tamori, even forgotten, guides him to the very end. At last, he absorbs the courage ability from one of the last users on the planet and collapses to the ground. Shunsuk appears, rescues his brother, and brings him back to Japan. When he wakes up in the hospital with Tamori at his side asking who she is, she realizes he has lost all of his memories, but she smiles, saying that she is his girlfriend, tells him about the time they spent in the student council and about the booklet she gave him. He says he kept it the whole time like a lucky charm, and she thanks him for coming back and takes him to reunite with his friends. And that's where our video ends. Everyone, this is an anime that I truly love. It's definitely one of my top 5 of all time, and I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what kind of power you would like to have. I would definitely want the ability to go back in time. But anyway, I'll stop here. Take care, stay with God. Thanks. See you next time.